22 aircraft, 80 minutes, one destroyer. On the morning of April 16, 1945, off the coast of Okinawa, a single American destroyer was attacked by drones. 22 Japanese kamikaze aircraft. 6 of them hit. 4 bombs exploded on her deck. Her steering failed. Her guns jammed. Her hull flooded. 103 of her crew were wounded or killed. She did not sink. Her captain, Commander Frederick Julian Becton, stood on the bridge for the entire 80 minutes, giving orders while the ship burned around him. When it was over, Laffey limped back to port under her own power. The Navy called her the ship that would not die. They gave her a Presidential Unit Citation. They turned her into a museum ship in Charleston, South Carolina, where she sits today. Thousands of people visit her every year. Almost none of them know the name of the man who kept her alive. Welcome to War Sea Stories. This is the story of Commander Frederick Julian Becton and the crew of USS Laffey. The ship is famous. The captain is not. If you think stories like this need to be told, hit subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know if you've ever heard of USS Laffey before today. What you're about to hear is not a story about a ship that got lucky. It's a story about a captain who made decisions under fire that saved 330 men. It's a story about a crew that kept fighting when every instinct told them to abandon ship. And it's a story about why the Navy remembers the steel, but forgets the man who commanded it. This is what happened on April 16, 1945. This is what it cost. And this is why almost nobody knows his name. Commander Frederick Julian Becton was 41 years old in April 1945. He was from Abilene, Texas. He had graduated from the United States Naval Academy in 1926, the same class as Arleigh Burke. He had spent most of his career on destroyers. By 1945, he had been at sea for nearly 3 years of continuous combat operations in the Pacific. He had commanded USS Laffey since February 1944, 14 months before the battle that would define his life. The crew knew him as a calm, methodical officer who did not raise his voice and did not panic. That reputation was about to be tested in a way no destroyer captain in the United States Navy had ever been tested before. The crew of USS Laffey was 336 men. Most of them were in their early 20s. Some were teenagers. They had been together for over a year. They had fought at the invasion of Normandy on D-Day, June 6, 1944, where Laffey had provided fire support for the landings at Omaha Beach. They had fought in the Pacific at Leyte Gulf, at Lingayen Gulf, and now at Okinawa. They were a veteran crew on a veteran ship. They trusted Commander Becton. They trusted each other. And on the morning of April 16, 1945, that trust was the only thing that kept them alive. USS Laffey was a Sumner-class destroyer. She was commissioned on February 8, 1944. She was 376 feet long. She displaced 2,200 tons at full load. Her main battery was 6 5-inch guns in 3 twin mounts. She carried 12 40mm anti-aircraft guns and 11 20mm anti-aircraft guns. She could make 34 knots in a clean sprint. She had no armor worth the name. Her hull was half an inch of steel. A kamikaze aircraft hitting her deck was not a glancing blow. It was a bomb with a pilot attached, traveling at 200 miles per hour, carrying 500 pounds of explosives. Laffey had been built to screen carriers, to hunt submarines, and to provide anti-aircraft fire. She had not been built to survive 22 aircraft trying to kill her in 80 minutes. But that is exactly what she was about to do. On April 16, 1945, USS Laffey was on radar picket duty off the coast of Okinawa. Radar picket duty was the most dangerous assignment in the United States Navy in 1945. The job was simple. A destroyer would position itself 50 to 70 miles north of the main fleet, alone or with 1 or 2 other ships, and act as an early warning radar station. When Japanese aircraft approached, The picket ship would radio the fleet and then defend itself. The Japanese knew where the picket ships were. They knew the picket ships were alone. They knew the picket ships were the easiest targets. So they attacked them first. Between April 6th and June 22nd, 1945, during the Battle of Okinawa, the United States Navy lost. 15 destroyers and destroyer escorts sunk. Most of them were on radar picket duty. Most of them were killed by kamikaze aircraft. Laffey's crew knew this. They had been on picket duty before. They had watched other ships get hit. They had seen the smoke on the horizon. They knew the odds. On the morning of April 16th, Laffey was stationed at Radar Picket Station 1, 70 miles north of Okinawa. She was not alone. 2 landing craft, LCS-51 and LCS-116, were with her. Landing craft support ships were small, slow, and lightly armed. They were there to pick up survivors if Laffey went down. At 0730, Laffey's radar picked up the first contacts. Japanese aircraft. Inbound. Lots of them. Commander Becton ordered the crew to general quarters. The men ran to their stations. The 5-inch guns loaded. The 40mm and 20mm guns swung toward the sky. The radar operators counted the contacts. 50 aircraft. Then more. The Japanese were sending everything they had. At 0827, the first kamikaze dove on Laffey. The 5-inch guns opened fire. The 40mm guns opened fire. The 20mm guns opened fire. The aircraft exploded in midair, 300 yards from the ship. The crew cheered. The second aircraft came in from the port side. Laffey's guns hit it. It crashed into the sea 50 yards away. The third aircraft came in low, skimming the water. Laffey's guns hit it. It exploded on the surface. The crew was still cheering when the fourth aircraft came in from astern. This one did not explode. This one hit. At 0839, a Japanese Zero fighter crashed into Laffey's stern, just aft of the number 5 5-inch gun mount. The impact killed the entire gun crew. The explosion blew a hole in the deck. Fires started immediately. Commander Becton ordered damage control teams to the stern. The men ran aft with hoses and extinguishers. Before they reached the fire, the 5th aircraft hit. This one struck the port side, near the waterline. The explosion opened the hull. Water poured in. Laffey began to list to port. Becton ordered counter-flooding to stabilize the ship. The crew opened valves on the starboard side, letting water in deliberately to balance the weight. It worked. The list stopped. But the aircraft kept coming. At 0842, a bomb hit the deck near the number 3 5-inch gun mount. The explosion killed 4 men and wounded 12 more. The gun mount was destroyed. At 0845, another kamikaze hit the starboard side. The explosion knocked out the ship's steering. Laffey could no longer turn. She could only go straight. Becton ordered the engine room to use the engines to steer, increasing power on one shaft and decreasing it on the other to turn. The ship. It was slow. It was clumsy. But it worked. The crew kept firing. At 0850, Commander Becton had a choice. He could order the crew to abandon ship. The ship was on fire. The steering was gone. The hull was flooding. 3 gun mounts were destroyed. Over 50 men were dead or wounded. The Japanese aircraft were still coming. Abandoning ship was the reasonable decision. It was the safe decision. Becton did not give the order. He stayed on the bridge. He kept giving orders. He kept the crew fighting. And the crew followed him. The men at the remaining guns kept loading and firing. The men in the engine room kept the turbines running. The men at the damage control stations kept fighting the fires. Nobody abandoned ship. Nobody ran. They stayed because their captain stayed. For the next 30 minutes, Laffey was hit again and again. At 0900, a kamikaze struck the forward deck. The explosion destroyed the number 1 5-inch gun mount. At 0905, another kamikaze hit the bridge. The explosion killed the helmsman and wounded Commander Becton. Shrapnel hit his face and arms. He did not leave the bridge. He wrapped a bandage around his head and kept giving orders. At 0910, a bomb hit the deck near the number 4 5-inch gun mount. The explosion killed 6 men. At 0915, another kamikaze hit the starboard side. The explosion knocked out the ship's radar. Laffey was now blind. She could not see the aircraft coming. The crew had to rely on visual spotting. At 0920, the last kamikaze dove on Laffey. The remaining guns opened fire. The aircraft exploded 50 feet above the deck. Burning debris rained down on the ship. And then it stopped. The sky was empty. The Japanese had run out of aircraft. Laffey was still afloat. Here's my question for you. You're the captain. Your ship is on fire. Your steering is gone. Your crew is dying. You can order them to abandon ship, or you can keep fighting. What do you do? Commander Becton chose to keep fighting. Do you think he made the right call? Leave a comment. I want to know what you think. When the attack ended at 0947, 80 minutes after it began, USS Laffey had been hit by 6 kamikaze aircraft. And 4 bombs. 32 men were dead. 71 were wounded. 3 of her 6 5-inch gun mounts were destroyed. Her steering was gone. Her radar was gone. Her hull was flooded. Her deck was on fire. But she was still afloat. Commander Becton ordered the crew to assess the damage. The engine room reported that both turbines were still running. The damage control teams reported that the fires were under control. The hull was flooding, but the pumps were keeping up. Becton made the decision. Laffey would return to port under her own power. No tow, no assistance. She would steam back to Okinawa on her own. And she did. At 10 knots, listing to port, with her crew working around the clock to keep the pumps running and the fires out, Laffey limped back to Hagushi anchorage. She arrived on April 17, 1945, 24 hours after the attack. The crew that met her at the dock could not believe she was still afloat. One officer from another ship looked at Laffey's hull and said, "I don't know how you're still here." Commander Becton replied, "Neither do I." USS Laffey was awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for her actions on April 16, 1945. The citation read, in part, "For extraordinary heroism in action against enemy Japanese aircraft while on radar picket duty off Okinawa on April 16, 1945. Fiercely attacked by a large number of hostile planes, USS Laffey fought valiantly against devastating bombing and strafing runs and the crash dive tactics of 6 Japanese suicide planes. Although battered and set afire by the tremendous impact of the plunging aircraft, she continued to fight effectively and, by her superb battle readiness and the courageous determination of her officers and men, succeeded in destroying or driving off all attackers. Commander Becton was awarded the Navy Cross. The citation for his Navy Cross mentioned his leadership, his courage, and his refusal to abandon ship. It did not mention that he had been wounded and stayed on the bridge. It did not mention that he had kept the crew fighting for 80 minutes while the ship burned around him. It did not mention that he had brought the ship home under her own power. The Navy Cross citation was 3 paragraphs long. Most people have never read it. Here's what I want to know. Why do we remember the ship and forget the captain? Laffey is a museum ship in Charleston. Thousands of people visit her every year. But how many of them know Commander Becton's name? How many of them know what he did on April 16, 1945? Do you think he deserves to be remembered? Leave a comment. Tell me what you think. After the war, USS Laffey was repaired and returned to service. She served in the Atlantic Fleet through the 1950s and 60s. She was decommissioned on March 29, 1975. In 1981, she was towed to Charleston, South Carolina, and turned into a museum ship. She is moored at Patriots Point Naval and Maritime Museum, next to the aircraft carrier USS Yorktown. Visitors can walk her decks, see her gun mounts, and stand on the bridge where Commander Becton stood on April 16, 1945. There is a plaque on the bridge. It tells the story of the attack. It mentions the 22 aircraft. It mentions the 6 hits. It mentions the 32 men who died. It mentions Commander Becton's name, once, in a list of commanding officers. The plaque does not say that he was wounded and stayed on the bridge. It does not say that he refused to abandon ship. It does not say that he brought the ship home under her own power. The ship is the story. The captain is a footnote. Frederick Julian Becton did not retire after the war. He stayed in the Navy. He commanded other ships. He served in staff positions. He was promoted to captain, then to rear admiral. He retired in 1966 after 40 years of service. He moved to California. He lived quietly. He did not write a memoir. He did not give interviews. He did not attend reunions of Laffey's crew. He was not interested in being remembered. In 1981, when Laffey was dedicated as a museum ship, the Navy invited him to the ceremony. He declined. He sent a letter instead. The letter said, "The ship belongs to the crew. I was just the captain." Frederick Julian Becton died on December 23, 1995, at the age of 91. His obituary in the New York Times was 4 paragraphs long. It mentioned that he had commanded USS Laffey. It mentioned the Presidential Unit Citation. It mentioned the Navy Cross. It did not mention the 80 minutes on April 16, 1945. It did not mention the decision to stay on the bridge. It did not mention the 330 men he brought home. In 2004, a historian named John Wukowitz published a book called Hell from the Heavens, The Epic Story of the Blasts, USS Laffey, and World War II's greatest kamikaze attack. It was the first full-length book about Laffey and her crew. Wukowitz interviewed surviving crew members. He read the action reports. He read Commander Becton's Navy Cross citation. And he wrote this sentence: "Becton's calm leadership under fire saved the ship and the lives of most of her crew." That sentence is true. But it is not the sentence most people remember. The sentence most people remember is, "The ship that would not die." The ship. Not the captain. Not the crew. The ship. That is how it works. The Navy honors the steel. The Navy remembers the hull number. The Navy turns the ship into a museum. And the man who kept the ship alive becomes a name on a plaque. Commander Frederick Julian Becton stood on the bridge of USS Laffey for 80 minutes while 22 aircraft tried to kill him. He was wounded. He kept fighting. He refused to abandon ship. He brought 330 men home. And today, if you visit USS Laffey in Charleston, you will see his name once in a list of commanding officers, in a font so small you have to lean in to read it. That is the Navy's memory. That is how institutions honor the men who save them. They turn them into footnotes. If you think Commander Becton's story deserves to be told, subscribe to this channel and share this video. Leave a comment with the name of someone you think should be remembered. It doesn't have to be a sailor. It doesn't have to be from World War II. Just someone who did something that mattered and didn't get the recognition they deserved. I'll read every comment. Thank you for watching War Sea Stories.